In today's video, we're gonna talk about the anti-apartheid movement, also known as AAM. This movement was a set of actions both inside and outside South Africa, aimed at opposing and ending the apartheid system that prevailed in South Africa from 1948 to 1994. While we were researching, we were wondering about the meaning of the word apartheid, but we'll find out as we continue. Now, how did this movement start? The anti-apartheid movement started in 1959 in the context of a political economic crisis due to the raised voices of Black communities, began a process of elimination of the discriminatory laws, which later the African National Congress led to fight against segregation laws by an unanimous Black majority. It was a collective effort despite the fact that Nelson Mandela led to non-violence and the multiracial democracy had begun. Apartheid originated in South Africa, entailed the legalization of racial segregation, depriving one group of political and civil rights while privileging another. In essence, it is a policy built on the premise of segregating people based on race or ethnicity. Hence, its name as apartheid after an Afrikaans word literally translated to setting apart. Plus, Afrikaans was the first language of southern ethnic group with Dutch descendants called Afrikaners. Subsequently, policies forced the majority of the population into reservations, denying mixed marriages, and restricted Black presence in public spaces. The national parties rise to power in 1948 solidified apartheid, creating separate institutions for non-white people. South Africa's independence weakened British control, while growing immigration and the spread of racist ideas further entrenched apartheid.
Let me share with you this short timeline to explain better how this movement developed. In the year 1652, the foundation of Cape Town by the Dutch East India Company was the first European settlement in South Africa. The Afrikaners were the descendants of the Dutch colonists. In 1927, the Native Administration Act was established. British government in charge of South African matters, reducing the power of non-white South Africans, permitting relocation if it was deemed necessary for public interests. In 1948, the segregation became law after the election of the National Party, led by D.F. Malan. In 1953, the Native Labour Act prohibited Black South Africans from striking from their jobs, and the Bantu Education Act enforced racially separated educational facilities. The schools designated for Black South Africans lost funding, denying education for the Black population. In 1953, the Native Labour Act prohibited Black South Africans from striking from their jobs, and the Bantu Education Act enforced racially separated educational facilities. The schools designated for Black South Africans lost funding, denying education for the Black population. In 1960, the Sharpeville massacre took place. It was one of the most gruesome acts against the Black population during the apartheid. Protesters against the past acts were shot by the police, killing at least 50 and wounding almost 200. In 1964, Nelson Mandela was imprisoned after leading armed resistance against the government. In 1991, Nelson Mandela becomes the president of the African National Congress, and then starts a political career to become president. In 1990, President Frederick de Klerk frees Nelson Mandela and promises to stop apartheid. In 1991, Nelson Mandela becomes the president of the African National Congress, and then starts a political career to become president. In 1994, the South African general election took place. It was the first time that people of all races could vote. Nelson Mandela was elected president, becoming the first Black South African to be in office. In 1996, the Constitution of South Africa was promulgated by President Nelson Mandela, making the apartheid and discrimination illegal.
The most prominent people of this movement were Nelson Mandela, leader of the African National Congress and South Africa's first black president, fought against apartheid through non-violent means. His legacy includes championing human rights, promoting multiracial democracy, and advocating for freedom for all. Steve Biko, an activist in the Black awareness movement during the 1960s and the 1970s, played a crucial role in the anti-apartheid struggle. His bravery and vision continue to inspire activists today, and especially after the abolition of apartheid was. Desmond Tutu. He was a prisoner Pacific who advocated for the anti-racist cause throughout his life and constantly organizing protests and strikes. He was recognized for his struggle internationally, and in 1994 he received the Nobel Peace Prize.
Now that we have gone deep into its history, what happened after the movement, and what did this movement achieve? Thanks to the resurgence of the movement, it has empowered the voices of Black communities, granting them their rightful place in society, where they live freely and independently. Despite these strides, the economic legacy of apartheid persists, with poverty and unemployment affecting the Black population. Forced relocations during segregation fracture many familial ties, resulting in a lower quality of life, has a significant consequence. You must also be intrigued by how South Africans live currently. Today, individuals have the freedom to live, work, and study anywhere, and interracial interactions and marriages are unrestricted. For the past 30 years, Black South Africans have democratically governed through the ANC, a stark contrast to the apartheid era, when voting was denied to them. Finally, we all agree that this movement is an inspiring example of peaceful resistance against oppression and demonstrates the power of people united to bring about significant change in society and in government policies. Furthermore, highlighting this story can help raise awareness about human rights and the importance of equality around the world.
Something fascinating we found about the anti-apartheid movement, it is an incredible perseverance and resilience over time. Despite facing fierce repression by the South African government, the movement never gave up its fight for freedom and equality, and they accomplished it successfully. This movement is maximum importance for several reasons, not only because of the change it made in the country, but also because apartheid in South Africa was a continuation of the colonial legacy that had oppressed indigenous population in many places around the world. The anti-apartheid movement not only fought against injustice of the present, but also challenged the power structure inherited from the colonial era. In this sense, its importance transcended the borders of South Africa, becoming a symbol of resistance against colonial oppression throughout the world. As future teachers, having familiarity with the anti-apartheid movement enhances teachers' effectiveness as educators, allowing them to engage students in meaningful dialogue, inspire activism, and contribute to the cultivation of a more just and equality society. We have reached the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did, but before you leave, I have a question for you. As we reflect on the anti-apartheid movement triumph over oppression, we must consider: what role do you believe individual responsibility plays in effecting meaningful change within our communities and society at large?